Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be Barbarian, number 2 would be Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff version, number 3 would be Gun Maverick, number 4 would be DC League of Super Pets, and number 5 would be Bullet Train. And, you know, I only got 1 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend, and I'm very happy with the one I did get right. But a part of the reason why I didn't get a good, or at least a better score, is the fact that when I did my box office talk video, I was totally unaware that the very next day, I would find out that the estimates were kind of wrong, or they were just, because I said last weekend the numbers were so close they could flip-flop at any moment. That's kind of what happened, and instead of Spider-Man being number 1, it was Gun Maverick. And then number 2 wasn't even Spider-Man, it was Bullet Train. Spider-Man opened at number 3 last weekend, technically. So I guesstimated that Spider-Man would still do better this weekend, when really it kind of underperformed compared to, like, hey, these movies have been out for a bit and you're re-releasing No Way Home with more footage. That should probably do a lot better, and instead, it did fine for a re-release, better than your average re-release, but still, you'd think the numbers would be a bit higher. I don't know if Sony would consider that a disappointment, or because it got higher numbers than your average re-release, people would just say it's fine, doesn't matter. I'm not too, well-versed or an expert on the subject of, re-release numbers. So anyways, I just wanted to explain, yes, I'm aware that the, stuff flipped on me when I, finished editing and uploading that video. I apologize. Now it's time to move on to the actual top 10. Number 1 was Barbarian, the only prediction I got right, making $10 million this weekend. Now, this is pretty damn good. I thought it would be an easy shoe-in for number 1 just because it's the only wide-release film that has gotten some kind of marketing buzz. I've seen this trailer a lot in front of other horror movies recently, so I think people were interested. I think, and I'm hoping that word of mouth of how fucking batshit it is will maybe spread and will maybe gain some curiosity for it moving forward. I know on CinemaScore, I believe the CinemaScore was like a C+, which was surprising to me because Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score isn't even in the Rottens. It's still positive. So I was very surprised to see, sometimes CinemaScore and the Rotten Tomatoes audience score can kind of reflect each other, sometimes. But this was kind of baffling to me. I'm hoping that, that doesn't deter people from actually, finding the movie and discovering for themselves, or listening to their friend who was like, man, you're not going to believe the crazy shit I just saw. But the thing is, though, and if this is to be believed, like I said, when it comes to these things can change. And especially when it comes to the budget, sometimes you're not entirely sure what the exact budget is. You kind of get a rough idea. According to Wikipedia, which is the only place that has this budget listed right now, the budget is $10.5 million. So right now, with this opening weekend, they have technically, made that budget back a bit. You know what I mean? And they're only 10 million away from doubling that. Well, I guess 11 million, because 10.5 would be 21. If that is to be believed, because conveniently enough, the worldwide total is 10.5 million. So, right now, the average for that would be 10.5 million. So maybe it's just a mix-up on Wikipedia, and it's actually not conveniently getting its money back, right away, like I'm thinking it did. Oh well, time to move on. This did pretty good. At number 2 is a movie that totally came out of nowhere, Brahmastra Part 1 Shiva. This is a film distributed by 20th Century Studios India, or I believe I'm getting that distribution company correct. It's essentially just 20th Century Studios, but focusing on Indian-made films. This movie made $4 million this weekend. Worldwide, it is sitting at $23 million. That is its total gross so far. I'd say, for a movie that I didn't even know about, coming in here, and the numbers are low anyways because it's that time of September, and also theater attendance isn't what it used to be. This is pretty impressive that it got here. The budget is 410 crore, and I tried to change that into what is that equivalent to in US $1 million, and I'm not going to be the one to report on that. Just know that it's probably doing pretty well. This is one of the most expensive movies to come from India, if not the most expensive. So that is pretty incredible. I had no idea this movie existed. It's supposed to kick off a whole series, cinematic universe of other films made by this team. So, hopefully it has maybe some bit of staying power in the US, and then the worldwide numbers continue to grow so they can see their plans fulfilled. Number 3, we have Bullet Train making $3.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $92 million, so that's $2 million over its $90 million initial production budget, which is very good. That is $8 million away from outgrossing Brad Pitt's Seven as well, by the way. And then worldwide, it is sitting at $211 million, so $31 million over its doubling point for that $90 million budget. So officially, you can say that this movie was a pretty damn good success, crossing over that 200 million margin point. It also outgrossed Fury by 1 million and is 12 million away from outgrossing Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise's Interview with the Vampire. So good on Bullet Train, still chugging along. And, I don't have anything else to add. You know what I mean? Let's go on to number 4, which is way more interesting to talk about, despite the fact that it's been here forever. That's the thing, is that some of these movies are here a while, and the struggle with me is I just don't know what else to keep adding, other than just the stats, But number 4, Top Gun Maverick, it's always interesting to talk about this one. Very close to Bullet Train, so this very well could flip-flop in the next couple days, making $3.1 million, adding to a domestic total of $705 million. Last week I talked about how it needs to outgross Avatar's entire domestic run to get to the number 4 highest grossing domestic films of all time. It's still $55 million away from getting there, and as much as it's still doing pretty damn good with these returns each weekend, it's probably not going to get there, but still pretty damn exciting. Worldwide, though, it is now at $1,453 million. It outgrossed Frozen 2 by $8 million, and it is now the 11th highest grossing film worldwide. So that's both domestic and then the international box offices combined. That's pretty fucking incredible. It needs $61 million to outgross Furious 7, and then it enters the top 10. But even if it doesn't enter the top 10, like I've been saying, it's been slowing down a lot, it's still impressive that it's gotten this close. Everything that we've talked about with this movie is so fucking impressive. What else is impressive is that number 5 is DC League of Super Pets, still clinging on. I say impressive, but it's just kind of like, for me, I don't know, seeing all these fucking stats every single weekend, this one is just a little bit more interesting than the other ones. It's still not the greatest thing in the world, especially for Dwayne Johnson and his massive box office ego. It made $2.8 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $85 million, so $5 million away from crossing over that initial production budget of $90 million. So they're almost there. They're almost in the spot that Bullet Train is. Like I've been saying, I'm just happy that Bullet Train has been doing way better, because that was unexpected. But it is now outgrossed WAG Animation's Smallfoot by $2 million, and it needs $20 million to outgross the Lego Movie 2, the second part. And once it does that, it would enter the top 3 highest grossing WAG films domestically. 20 million though is a pretty big number when you're making like 2-3 million every weekend now, seemingly. So I doubt that it will get there, but at least it's now number 4, you know what I mean? Worldwide, though, it's sitting at 168 million, so not only are they 15 million away from outgrossing Storks, the other WAG animation film that this movie is competing with financially, but it is 12 million away from finally doubling its $90 million budget. And it's like, it seems like such an easy number, but when you factor in how much it's actually making, it's like, man, that is such a fucking steep climb, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh. Good on you, though, I guess. Number 6, we have The Invitation, making $2.6 million, adding to a domestic total of $18 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $25 million, so it not only has doubled its $10 million budget now after 3 weekends of being out, but it is now $5 million over that doubling point and $5 million away from getting to a triple point of a budget, which, you know what? Seeing where it is right now, like, it's not like barely over 20 million after last weekend. It's like, no, a good solid, like, 25, halfway there. I think they might be able to triple that budget. I hope that doesn't mean they're getting like, franchise ideas in their head just because they're able to, very, very slimly triple that budget, because that's how the movie ends, is that they kind of hint at, man, wouldn't you like to see these 2 characters come back, these 2 specific friends in the movie? And it's like, no, I know I haven't reviewed it, but that would be a big talking point, is how fucking terrible that ending is. Moving on, though, to number 7, which I'm sure is equally as terrible a film, Life Mark, a new Kirk Cameron starring, producing film, Kendrick Brothers, Christian adoption film, whatever the fuck, making $2.2 million. Don't know what the budget is, don't know if it has a worldwide total, probably not. This seems like a movie that would only be catered to like the US audience, the US Christians out there. But hey, those Fathom events, this was a Fathom event. Yeah, it was a Fathom event. Good on them, I guess. $2 million. Well, enough of that shit. Moving on to number 8, which is Beast, making $1.8 million, adding to a domestic total of $29 million. It is $2 million away from outgrossing Adrift, Baltazar Kormaker's previous film that it is right there with as far as like what it's competing with, entering his highest grossing ranks. Oh my god, I feel like I've been talking about how it's been like this million away, this million away, this million away about Adrift forever. So the fact that it's like, it's 2 million away from getting over that point, good, but also like next weekend there's like 3 movies that have the potential to shove everything else out, and we might not be able to talk about it next weekend. It's like, oh my gosh, you know? Worldwide it is sitting at $52 million. That's 20 million from the doubling point of that $36 million budget, so still pretty sad that, you know, despite the fact that I was pleasantly surprised with how that movie turned out, not too many people are listening to that, or maybe they're just going with how everybody else is kind of just saying like, oh, it's a thriller, kind of whatever. I don't know. I wish more people gave it a chance, but worldwide, it is 5 million away from outgrossing Adrift. So, once again, almost there. Almost fucking there. Number 9, though, is Minions: The Rise of Gru, making 1.6 million, adding to a domestic total of 362 million. That is 6 million away from Despicable Me 2 and The Secret Life of Pets. Worldwide, it is sitting at 903 million, which is 72 million away from Despicable Me 2. We're kind of at a point where, I mentioned it in the last movie we talked about, but, you know, the movies that are coming out this weekend could have the potential to shove all these bottom 3 out, and we might not be able to talk about them anymore. So 6 million away from outgrossing Despicable Me 2 and Secret Life of Pets to be the highest grossing Illumination film domestically of all time. If it happens, it would probably outside of the top 10 in a place where I, you know, down below where I very scarcely talk about box office records. So if it does, I can't talk about it, you know, kind of a bummer, I guess, you know, that's kind of big news, and a new Illumination crown, but who cares? It's the fucking Minions. You know, they're a big ol' success. Yay! They're like one of the only few movies that are making a shit ton of money this summer, or this year actually, these last 2 years. But finally closing out the video, number 10, oh my god, the one I said got number 1 last weekend, and then Sony sent the wrong fucking projections and ended up at number 3. I predicted it for number 2, and now it's at number 10. Spider-Man No Way Home, making 1.3 million, adding to a domestic total of $813 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $1,913 million. So, domestically, 45 million away from outgrossing Endgame. Worldwide, 135 million from outgrossing Infinity War. Kind of a who cares kind of situation of like, well, it's probably not going to make any more right now, so whatever, you know. While it was re-released, it didn't cross any other MCU films in the ranking, but you know what? Good to see it back just for a little bit, you know, kind of makes up for how, like, I didn't do a box office talk series back when Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and I couldn't talk about all the fucking records it broke there. So, I mean, I didn't really talk about it all that much for these last 2 videos, but, you know, I don't know, I talked about it at least. But now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I'm going with The Woman King. I think this is a pretty easy number 1. Number 2, I think will be Pearl. I think after, you know, X came out, and it did okay, but, you know, financially, but then, you know, people started to talk about that more, and they announced a prequel kind of right away. I think this movie will be able to see a bit of a boost and, you know, squeeze in there for number 2. And number 3, I'm going to predict Barbarian, just simply off of the fact that I think word of mouth could potentially help carry over in the next weekend. I don't see it doing better than Pearl, but it still could be a contender for number 3. Then number 4, I'm going to go with See How They Run. Obviously, it's not getting like the best marketing in the world, but, you know, I've seen some TV spots, the trailer shows up every once in a while for some movies I see, and, you know, after the success of Knives Out, you know, a murder mystery, I'm thinking, you know, people out there, if they hear that another one is out there, they'll still be kind of interested. So I'm not gonna say like, oh my god, it's gonna make so much money. I doubt it. I think Woman King will probably have the chance to make the most money, but everything else is kind of like, yeah, same old thing that we've been seeing for the last couple weekends. It might not make the biggest amount in the world, but I think I'll have a chance to just stick around, you know? And then number 5, I'll go with Brahmastra Part 1, Shiva, hoping that it holds over, maybe just out of people's curiosity for what got number 2 this weekend. Anyways, if you got your predictions right for this week, you're going to get a shout out right now. Unless you didn't get it right, then I'm sorry. But as always, you can leave your predictions for next week down below. If you think something's going to flip-flop, just leave it there. You might get a shout out. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.